close your eyes for just a few seconds and try to cast your mind back to the very beginning. Picture the classroom where you first learned to read. Recall the brightly colored posters lining the wall above the chalkboard, each featuring a cheerful illustration next to a bold, blocky character. Now, hear the melody that was drilled into your developing brain. Sing the song in your head. A, B, C, D, all the way through the rhythmic cadence to the final definitive Z. Congratulations! You have just recited the 26 letters of the English alphabet. From that moment in your childhood, your brain was permanently hardwired to accept those 26 symbols as the complete, unquestionable DNA of the English language. We treat this set of characters as a fundamental law of the universe, as fixed and absolute as the boiling point of water or the number of hours in a day. We are taught that these 26 linguistic bricks are all we will ever need to construct every profound novel, every binding legal contract, every fleeting text message, and every passionate love letter ever written. The system feels closed. It feels sacred. It feels utterly unchangeable. You don't edit the alphabet. It is the bedrock, the foundation beneath everything we know. But what if I told you that this unshakable foundation is an illusion? What if the linguistic bedrock you stand on has been chipped away, reshaped, and heavily edited behind your back without you ever realizing it? Or the truth, a truth that has been quietly buried by the passage of time and the convenience of modern standardization, is that the English alphabet did not always come to a hard stop at the letter Z. It had a 27th letter. This wasn't in some ancient, unrecognizable era of human history. Within the living memory of a time your great-great-grandparents could have known, back when children were sitting in one-room schoolhouses with chalk slates and inkwells, the English alphabet was demonstrably longer. This 27th letter was not a myth, nor was it a piece of obscure academic trivia. It occupied a position of ultimate honor, sitting proudly at the very end of the sequence, right after Z. It was the grand finale of the alphabet. Children recited it in their daily lessons, or it was printed boldly in the standard spelling books and classroom primers of the 19th century. It was categorized and defined in the dictionaries of the era. It was carved in stone above the grand archways of educational institutions, and it was woven seamlessly into the formal documents that governed everyday life. It was a functioning, vital organ of the written word. And then, as if erased by an invisible hand, it vanished completely. There was no grand public declaration of its removal. No king issued a royal decree banning it, no legislative body held a vote, and no academic council hosted a public debate to explain its exile. It was an assassination by omission. It simply stopped being taught. It stopped being printed on the new classroom charts. It was quietly dropped from the updated editions of dictionaries. Teachers eventually stopped demanding that their students recite it. Within the span of a single generation, the collective memory of the English-speaking world had been wiped clean. So, what was this mysterious, vanished letter? You don't need to dig through ancient scrolls to find it. In fact, you look at it almost every single day. You might have even typed it on your phone this morning. It glows in neon lights above trendy restaurants. It is stitched into the labels of high-end clothing brands, and it functions as a casual shorthand in the hurried messages we send to our friends. It is the character we all know as the ampersand. Today, our modern brains have been meticulously conditioned to view the ampersand not as a letter, but merely as a typographic convenience. We mentally file it away in the same category as the asterisk, or the percentage sign, or the hashtag. It is a symbol that represents a word, specifically the word "and." But we do not grant it the dignity of being a structural building block of the language itself. we view it as an accessory. But for centuries, it was undeniably the 27th letter. If you were to walk into a classroom in the early 1800s, you would hear a recitation that sounded slightly different from the one you know. When the students reached the end of the alphabet, X, Y, Z, they couldn't simply append the ampersand by saying its meaning. Saying X, Y, Z, and would make no sense. It would sound as if the child simply forgot what came next. To solve this, they used a Latin phrase to clarify that they were referring to the character itself. They were taught to conclude the song by chanting, "and per se und and." This translates roughly to, the character "and" by itself means "and." Now, imagine thousands of restless school children racing through their alphabet recitations, trying to get to recess. They would slur the words together. And per se and quickly devolved into a phonetic blur. And per se and ampersand. The very word we use today to name this symbol was literally born from the mispronunciation of bored children. The name ampersand is a linguistic ghost. It is a fossilized echo of a classroom ritual that no longer exists. The word itself is a permanent scar left on the body of the English language, forever marking the exact spot where a piece of our alphabet was surgically removed. This realization forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question. Why was it removed? But if you take this question to a historian of typography or an academic linguist, they will offer you a very neat, clinical, and logical explanation. They will tell you that the ampersand, by its very nature, is a ligature, a stylistic combination of the Latin letters E and T, spelling out the Latin word for and. A true alphabet, they argue, is supposed to be phonetic. Every letter should represent a distinct sound produced by the human vocal tract, like the hard B or the hissing S. Because the ampersand represents a whole concept or word, rather than a single phonetic sound, 19th century grammarians decided it was a categorical error to call it a letter. So, in the name of academic purity and standardization, it was demoted to a punctuation mark. It sounds like a perfectly reasonable narrative of progress. It sounds like society simply tidied up its linguistic toolbox. But when you start pulling at the threads of this explanation, the entire tapestry begins to unravel. Because the ampersand wasn't the only character to be exiled. If you look back through the centuries, you will realize that the history of the English alphabet is actually a massive, silent graveyard of deleted letters. Open a manuscript written in Old English, and you will encounter a rich, complex, and highly expressive set of characters that put our modern 26 letters to shame. There was a letter called thorn, a tall character with a loop resting on its side, which was explicitly designed to represent the hard TH sound you make when you say the word thick. There was another letter called eth, resembling a lowercase d with a line crossed through its top stem, which captured the softer, vibrating TH sound found in the word this. There was win, a beautifully strange rune that carried the W sound long before anyone had the idea to stick two U characters together. There was ash, a dedicated letter that physically mashed the A and E together into one shape to perfectly encapsulate the distinct nasal vowel sound hovering right between them. Unlike the ampersand, these were true, undeniable phonetic letters. They were specifically engineered to map the organic, nuanced sounds that actually come out of human mouths. They provided a high-definition, localized accuracy to written speech. And yet, every single one of them was ruthlessly exterminated from the alphabet. Why were they discarded? The answer has absolutely nothing to do with the natural evolution of language and everything to do with the cold, hard realities of economics, technology, and power. The mass slaughter of the English alphabet was triggered by the arrival of the printing press in the late 15th century. Before this machine existed, books were painstakingly copied by hand. Scribes across different regions used whatever local letters best captured their specific dialects. The written language was wild, decentralized, and deeply accurate to how people actually spoke in their communities. The printing press destroyed that organic diversity. It was an engine of mass production that demanded absolute, rigid uniformity. Early English printers, such as William Caxton, did not invent their own typography from scratch. What they imported their heavy iron presses and their lead typefaces from continental Europe, mostly from Germany and the Netherlands. Herein lay the fatal problem. The German and Dutch alphabets did not possess the unique English sounds of thorn, eth, or win. Their lead typefaces simply did not have those characters. Faced with the massive expense of casting entirely new, custom lead blocks for these specific English letters, the printers made a ruthless business decision. They compromised the language to save money. Because the uppercase letter Y in the imported typefaces vaguely resembled the handwritten cursive version of the letter thorn, printers simply started using Y as a cheap substitute for the TH sound. But this economic shortcut is the exact reason why you see modern tourist traps with signs reading "Ye Old Pub" or "Ye Old Sweet Shop." Here is the shocking truth. It was never, ever pronounced with a Y sound. The people of the time always pronounced it as "the." The Y was nothing more than a typographical error, a forced substitution imposed upon the reading public by an imported machine. The alphabet was drastically reshaped, not because the language demanded it, but because it had to bow to the financial limitations of early printing technology. Between the 1400s and the 1800s, this relentless drive for standardization became a cultural obsession. The chaotic, vibrant diversity of written English was hammered into a sterile, uniform shape. The dictionaries were compiled to rigidly enforce newly invented spelling rules. Institutional authorities, wealthy printers, textbook publishers, and elite academics wrested control of the language away from the people who actually spoke it. They became the ultimate arbiters of what stayed and what was thrown away. They optimized the alphabet for the mechanical convenience of mass reproduction, completely disregarding the loss of human expressiveness. The silent removal of the ampersand was merely the final fading echo of this centuries-long pruning process. They justified its removal by claiming it wasn't a phonetic letter. But whether intentional or not, its deletion carried a profound cultural weight. The ampersand was the literal symbol of connection. It was the character of unity, of linking one idea to another, one person to the next. By excising it from the foundational sequence of the alphabet, the architects of our modern language sent a subtle message. Connection is secondary. It is an optional accessory, not a core pillar of our communication. When we lose a letter, we lose a fraction of our ability to articulate the human experience. When thorn and eth were collapsed into the generic two-letter TH combination, our written language lost its ability to visually distinguish between two entirely different sounds. The resolution of our text was permanently downgraded. It became a blurrier, less precise reflection of our speech. So, the next time you sit down to type an email, or read a novel, or teach a toddler to sing the classic ABC song, take a moment to remember what was stolen from them. Listen very closely to the rhythm of the song. Wait for that final beat immediately following the letter Z. There is a heavy, lingering silence there. That silence is not emptiness. It is the ghost of the 27th letter, crying out from the void. It serves as a chilling reminder that the systems we are handed in life, the systems we are explicitly told are complete, natural, and utterly unchangeable, rarely are. If a handful of authorities can quietly erase an entire letter from the alphabet, rewrite the dictionaries, and successfully make the whole world forget it ever existed, you are forced to confront a terrifying thought. What other fundamental truths of your reality have been quietly edited while you weren't looking?